නව ඩොමෙක්ස් වැල්ලම් සහ විස බීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. ඩොමෙක්ස්.
Line of life. India extends its credit line to Sri Lanka by $200 million. Energy Minister says new fuel pricing formula on the way. China to comply. China's Colombo envoy reiterates fullest support for Sri Lanka in securing IMF assistance. Conceptual agreement. SLPP and independent MPs agree to concept on national consensus government. Samagi Janabalavege resolute to bring no confidence motion against government. To buy or not to buy. European Union split over ending oil purchases from Russia. All this and much more coming up on this Monday, the 2nd of May 2022.
Clear Ice Cool Menthol. Ishori වලින් තොර ලස්සන කෙස් කලබක් ලබා දෙයි. Clear සමගින් දැන් zero dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on AdaDerana English News on AdaDerana 24, and I'm Indibri Amwanta. The Ceylon Petroleum Private Tanker Owners Association called off their strike today as they received assurances of a 30% hike to their transportation rates as proposed by the Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara. It was also revealed that India extended its existing $500 million credit line to Sri Lanka for purchasing fuel by a further $200 million as the existing credit line is about to end this month. The subject minister said that 4 fuel shipments are also expected to arrive this month under the $200 million extension.
The Ceylon Petroleum Private Tanker Owners Association began strike action at midnight on the 30th of April. They called off their action with immediate effect this evening following assurance given by the Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara that their transportation rates will be increased by 30%. A spokesperson of the association said that fuel distribution activities will return to normal as the distribution bouncers will return to duty. Prior to the strike being called off, it was only 86 bouncers owned by the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals along with several other bouncers of the private sector that engaged in distribution during the day. As a result, fuel distribution was affected as a majority of hired private sector bouncers refrained from distribution. In the meantime, the subject minister said that sufficient fuel stocks are available in storage terminals, and in the days to come, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is also expecting to clear another shipment of petrol that is currently anchored in Sri Lankan waters. However, the $500 million Indian credit line, which provided some relief to Sri Lanka, is expected to be over by the second week of May. With that being the case, the Indian government granted an extension to the existing credit line to purchase fuel in a bid to support Sri Lanka.
පිට තව මිලියන 200ක මුදලක් ඔවුන් වැඩි කරා. ඒ තුලනුත් තවත් නෞකා 4ක් මේ මාසය තුල ලබා ගැනීමට අපි නියමිතලා තිබෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව අපිට මුදල් අමාත්‍යවරයා සහ ඉන්දියානු මහ කොමසාරිස් කාර්යාලය දන්වලා තිබුණා තවත් මිලියන 500ක් බිලියන 1.2ක් දක්වා දීර්ඝ කරන්න ඔවුන්ගේ අදහසක් තියෙනවා කියන එක. නමුත් තවමත් ඒ පිළිබඳව අපිට නිශ්චිතව වාර්තා කළා නැහැ. ඒ ගත්ත තීරණය පිළිබඳව අපි ඊයේ ඔවුන් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන මේ 500 මුදලෙත් ඒ කටයුතු කර ගැනීම සඳහා.
Speaking further, Minister Kanchana Wijesekara commented the introduction of a fuel price formula in the future.
මිල ඉහළ යාමක් පහළ යාමක් පිළිබඳව අපි තව සති දෙකක් වෙනකම් අපි මේ පිළිබඳව අපි සාකච්ඡා කරන්න කටයුතු කළා නැහැ. නමුත් අපි පහුගිය මිල සංශෝධනය අපි යෝජනා කරා. ඉන්දියානු IOC සමාගම සහ සිපෙට්කෝ කියන දෙකම එකම මිල සූත්‍රයක් යටතේ වෙළඳ පොලේ මිල ඉහළ පහළ යන අවස්ථාවෙත් ඩොලර් එක ඉහළ පහළ යන අවස්ථාවෙත් ඒ බර සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ජනතාව මත දාන්න නැතුව යම් මිල සූත්‍රයක් අනුව විනිවිදභාවයෙන් පේන මිල සූත්‍රයක් අනුව ගිණුමක් සහ මිල සූත්‍රයක් කියන දෙකම අපි හඳුන්වා දෙන්න කටයුතු කරනවා. ඒක ඊළඟ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා. මේ සතිය අපි IOC සමාගමත් එක්ක මේ මිල සූත්‍රය පිළිබඳව සාකච්ඡා කරනවා.
Now, the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Qi Zhengzong, today reiterated China's fullest support for Sri Lanka in securing the assistance of the International Monetary Fund to overcome the ongoing financial crisis. The Chinese envoy made these remarks during a meeting with the Minister of Finance Ali Sabri. As a major shareholder of the IMF, China is willing to play an active role in encouraging the IMF to positively consider Sri Lanka's difficulties and reach proper agreement as soon as possible, the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka has said. While talks are underway with the IMF in securing a loan program, the central bank governor, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, recently expressed his confidence that a staff-level agreement with the IMF is likely to be reached within the next 2 months. Now, the Ministry of Finance, meanwhile, moved to offer a clarification over a recent news article titled, "Indian Credit for Food Goes to Import Steel." The Finance Ministry said the news article was based on false information. A Finance Ministry statement said the government of Sri Lanka has signed the $1 billion credit facility agreement with the Indian government to facilitate Sri Lankan importers who face many difficulties in opening letters of credit to import food and other essential items due to the shortage of foreign currency in the banking system and the market. Based on the monthly requirement and the information received from the importers, the credit line was initially allocated for the importation of A, essential food items, which is of about $300 million, B, medicine, which is amounting to about $200 million, and C, industrial raw materials, which amounts to about $500 million. The statement added, this allocation, however, was later revised to accommodate much needed fuel and LP gas by reducing the allocation for industrial raw materials and food items. These allocations were determined considering the revealed requirements at the time of finalizing the credit line, the Finance Ministry said in a statement. Now, in the latest development to the political crisis, the ruling Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna says the party has conceptually agreed on the formation of a national consensus government. The decision was taken when representatives of the SLPP, together with a group of party parliamentarians who recently decided to remain independent in parliament, met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house for yet another discussion. In the meantime, Chief Prelate of the Malvatta chapter, the Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera, said he will not allow any politician to have audiences with him. The Mahanayaka Thera said he took the decision because no responsible persons have still responded to the proposals by the chief incumbents of the 3 Buddhist chapters on resolving the country's crisis.
After President Gotabaya Rajapaksa agreed to form an interim government during Friday's talks with members of the SLPP independent group, yet another meeting between the head of state, the independent MPs and representatives of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna convened this morning at the President's house. Representing the independent parliamentarians Nimal Siripala De Silva, Bimal Weerawansa, Udaya Gammampila and Anura Priyadarshana Yapa attended the meeting. Minister Professor G.L. Pieris, Minister Dr. Ramesh Pathirana, Sagara Kariyawasam, Sanjeev Edirimana and Basil Rajapaksa attended the talks representing SLPP. Following the meeting, SLPP General Secretary Sagara Kariyawasam said that the party agreed to the formation of a national consensus government.
දැන්ට තියෙන ආර්ථික ප්‍රශ්නයෙන් ගොඩේම සඳහා යම්කිසි කාල සීමාවක් සඳහා ඒ වගේ අන්තර් සහයෝගිතා ආණ්ඩුවක් පත් කිරීමේ ඒ මූලික සංකල්පයට අපි සංකල්පයක් හැටියට පක්ෂ එකඟතාවය ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
මේ රජය පිහිටවීමේදී අප දෙපාර්ශ්වය පමණක් නොව අනිකුත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුව නියෝජනය කරන දේශපාලන පක්ෂ සහභාගී කරවා ගැනීම සඳහා සියලු දෙනාම සාමූහික ප්‍රයත්නයක් දැරිය යුතු බව අපි තීරණය කරා.
While holding their stance not to support an interim government, the Samaga Janabala Vega said yesterday that its leader Sajith Premadasa is capable of rebuilding the nation. In this backdrop, a group of SJB parliamentarians met today to discuss their way forward. Following the meeting, MP Hesha Vitanage said that they will present a no-confidence motion against the government on Wednesday, the 4th of May. Further, MP JC Alabatwala told media that the party decided to present an impeachment against the president as well over his failure to act on the public opinion, which is to resign from his position. In the meantime, Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuwave Sri Sumangala Thera, has decided not to allow any politicians to meet him. The decision has been taken by the Mahanayaka Thera as no responsible persons have provided a favourable response to the proposals by the Chief Prelates of the three Buddhist chapters on resolving the current crisis of the country.
Many anti-government protests continue to be staged across the country. The main protest site, which has been the inspiration to many others, the Goldface Green protest, was carried out for a 24th day today. Many other protests were also worked off across the country to show opposition to the current living conditions and the worsening economic situation of the country.
The protest at the Goldface Green is merely 4 days away from marking a month since its inception. Hundreds of people continue to gather at the Goldface Green to agitate against the rising costs of living, lack of essentials and other commodities in the country. Protesters at the Goldface Green today erected a temporary stage in front of the entrance of the Presidential Secretariat and began their demonstrations. However, police requested the protesters to take down the stage. Subsequently, the riot police which arrived at the location was met with opposition from the protesters. Following the protest, the riot police moved out of the area. After the police gathered in front of the Presidential Secretariat failed to convince protesters to remove the stage, they too left the area. In the meantime, the protest in front of the Prime Minister's official residence, the Temple Trees, was worked off today for an 8th consecutive day, as the people showed no sign of vacating the premises unless their demands are heard. The participation of civil society organizations was also a notable sight. The relentless determination of those gathered opposite the Premier's residence was clearly visible last night as they persevered through the downpour. In the meantime, apart from the main protest site at the Goldface Green that continues to gain traction, people continued to stage anti-government protests in other parts of the country as well. Some of the areas that had seen such protests were Kalutara, Kandy and Galle. Meanwhile, a group of people in the area of Pugoda staged an anti-government protest today, expressing support to the protest at the Goldface Green. The protesters at the site had staged a drama that depicted what the country's May Day celebration in the year 2035 might look like. In other developments, around 2,000 farmers of the Min Area Joint Farmers Organisation carried out a demonstration in the area of Hinguragoda today. The protesters had demanded for the government to provide compensation to the damage their crops suffered due to the government's fertilizer ban.
Now in London, Sri Lankans there gathered in the biggest protest so far. The Sri Lankan community in the UK gathered in front of the House of Commons, urging the government and the President in Sri Lanka to step down immediately. Here is a report from the protest site by our UK bureau correspondent Nalin Pereira.
Many anti-government protests calling for the incumbent president and government to resign have been worked off in both Sri Lanka and major cities across the world. In London yesterday, Sri Lankans living in the UK gathered in one of the biggest protests organised there so far. Organisers estimate around 4,000 to 5,000 protesters participating in the demonstration that was carried out in front of the House of Commons in London yesterday. According to our correspondent in London, the voice of the Sri Lankans gathered at the protest site was no different to those in Sri Lanka.
What we are witnessing today is probably the biggest protest rally in Europe in front of the House of Commons at the British Parliament. The diaspora in the UK are all here in solidarity with all our sisters and brothers in Sri Lanka to show them that although we are thousands of miles away, we have not forgotten them. The Sri Lankan community in this country is incredibly disappointed with the politicians who are still trying to make deals with each other and trying to hang on to power, while our mothers, fathers, sisters and brothers are going through unprecedented hardship because of the years of mismanagement by our leaders. What they are saying is that now we need action, not promises or more deals. We need educated, genuine, honest people in the right places to rectify the mistakes that they have made dragging our motherland since independence in 1948 to what it is today.
The current situation in Sri Lanka is out of our hands due to our dear beloved politicians, family-run dictatorship. The situation has not gone out of the hands right now. It was going down gradually. From the time we got independence, every single politician has done something wrong. We all know that. We Sri Lankans, we just don't accept the mistakes that they do. We re-elect them, we bring them back to the parliament. We are hospitable people, but I think it's time for all the cheap politicians to leave us alone.
I'm supporting this movement here because I love Sri Lanka. I spent quite a lot of time. I visited this country, beautiful country, many times. And it's really very painful what is happening now when so many people are starving. They don't have food. Children are going hungry to school and it's really horrible.
The corruption has been rife for many years. All parties, JVP it may be, UNP or any other for that matter, have been the same. So the political system must change as soon as possible, and I think this is a golden moment for that to happen, and we are supporting in all aspects possible.
The Criminal Investigations Department summoned 15 individuals who were involved in the Mirihana protest today to record statements regarding the incident. Appearing on behalf of those summoned, Attorney-at-Law Manoj Nanayakara said that the CID must find those responsible for attacking the protesters in Mirihana in an inhuman manner, instead of naming a group of innocent people as witnesses. The first anti-government protest was held on the 31st of March in Mirihana in the vicinity of the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's residence. The people voiced their agitation against the dire economic situation in the country. However, 54 people were later arrested by police after what started off as a peaceful protest escalated into a tense situation, resulting in the damage of public property. With the intervention of many lawyers, however, many of those who were arrested were granted bail. We have your business and international news following after this break.
Big 3.
The Ministry of Health announced yesterday that the Gazette notification mandating full COVID vaccination status to enter public places has been repealed. The Ministry of Health issued an extraordinary gazette earlier this year, making it mandatory for all people to have all 3 doses of the vaccine regimen in order to visit public places. However, Minister of Health Professor Channa Jayasumana has taken measures to repeal the gazette with effect from yesterday. Meanwhile, according to the Department of Government Information, the number of COVID patients confirmed yesterday was 11. According to the Epidemiology Unit, 14 million have been completely inoculated, while 7 million among them have received their booster doses so far. Taking you to business news, the officials of the Board of Investment inspected progress of the textile park in Punnakuda in Batticaloa, which is currently under construction. The park, a 255-acre land, is equipped with all facilities and has the potential to establish 8 to 10 large-scale factory complexes. The textile park can be named the largest development project undertaken in the Eastern Province. In addition, the government is to spend a sum of 5.5 billion rupees on the development of infrastructure facilities in the project, which will eventually boost infrastructure facilities in the area. Addressing media, BOI Chairman Raja Edrisuriya said that the first phase of construction of the park will provide an opportunity to add raw material to the local apparel industry. He also said that this will not only prevent $500 million from flowing out of the country, but also provide an opportunity to manufacture apparel made entirely from local material for the global market. Speaking further, BOI Director General Renuka Veerakon said that they aspire to establish the textile park in a more environmentally friendly manner. Taking you to an update on the Colombo Bourse. Colombo stocks ended in green territory today as market ended 0.17% higher. The all-share price index ended at 7,624.26, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks closed at 2,509.25. Overall, market turnover for the day was 2.5 billion rupees. And in the US, shares fell and the dollar held near highs in holiday-thin trading on Monday as concerns about economic growth lingered ahead of an expected US rate hike this week, and after data showed COVID-19 lockdowns slowed China's factory activity. After Wall Street suffered its worst drop since 2020, on Friday, US equity futures bounced back, sending Nasdaq and S&P 500 up between 0.8% and 0.6% today.
MSCI's benchmark for global stocks was down by 0.3% as European and Asian shares fell ahead of the Federal Reserve decision and following Wall Street's steep losses on Friday in the wake of a disappointing Amazon update. Data that signaled a steeper pace of contraction in China's factory activity also dampened risk appetite, although the closure of London and most Asian markets for a holiday reduced volumes. The Pan-European Stock 600 index fell 1.2%, on course to snap a three-day winning streak. Japan's Nikkei fell 0.1% and South Korea's Kospi declined 0.3%. Factory activity in China contracted at a steeper pace in April as widespread COVID-19 lockdowns halted industrial production and disrupted supply chains in the world's second-largest economy. A survey on Monday also showed that Eurozone manufacturing output growth stalled in April as factories struggled to source raw materials while demand took a knock from steep price increases and concerns about the economic outlook. That raised fears of a sharp slowdown in the second quarter that will weigh on a global growth, just as central banks around the world would start to tighten policy aggressively to combat inflation pressures exacerbated this year by the war in Ukraine. Investors expect the Fed to raise rates by 50 basis points on Wednesday. Economists say a 50 basis point hike in the Fed fund target rate and the announcement of the beginning of quantitative tightening seems to be a done deal. Still, market participants are uncertain as to whether this big leap forward in the Fed's policy tightening process will be accompanied by dovish, neutral or hawkish statements. US equity futures bounced back on Monday, sending Nasdaq and S&P 500 E- up between 0.8% and 0.6%. US Treasury yields nudged in the European morning trade, staying a little low below of their peaks hit last week. The benchmark 10-year yield added 0.4 basis points to 2.941%, having reached as high as 2.918% on April 20. The dollar edged back towards its nearly two-decade high and the euro slipped down as $1.05 as investors prepared for the likely Fed rate hike.
Taking you to other developments, Sri Lanka's age-old enemy is back again as it does its rounds again, as authorities say that a 32% hike in dengue cases have been reported in the island. According to the National Dengue Control Unit, Sri Lanka recorded 4,019 dengue cases for the month of April, a 32% hike compared to the month of March. Speaking to AdaDerana English News, consultant community physician at the National Dengue Prevention Unit, Dr. AdaDerana said that the country does not report outbreaks of upsticks during this time of the year. She stated that the reason for that uptrend in the dengue cases was due to the intermittent rains the country has been experiencing over the past weeks. So far, there have been 18,016 patients recorded in the country for this year. As such, Dr. Derana urged the people to be mindful of their surroundings and clean their immediate environments and make them free of mosquito breeding grounds. She also urged the people to seek medical advice if they have fever that persists for more than 24 hours. The Department of Meteorology meanwhile issued an advisory for heavy rainfall in 3 provinces later today. The Department of Meteorology has issued an advisory for heavy rains in 3 provinces. Showers or thunder showers will occur at times in the western, Sabaragamuwa and southern provinces. Heavy showers above 100 millimeters may occur at some places in these areas, according to the Met Department advisory. The Manudam Mehevara Relief Program, which aims to provide dry rations to low-income families struggling due to the current economic condition, was worked off in Ratnapura recently. The first phase of the AdaDerana program, this relief program, was held in Ratnapura and was carried out at the Sri Lanka or Sri Derana Buddhist Centre in Kandula, Ratnapura. The project was jointly carried out with the support of Dialogue Asiata, MAS Holdings, Hema's Ceylon Biscuits and the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. The Manudam Mehevara project of AdaDerana to distribute packs of dry rations to needy families is being implemented across all 25 districts of the country. China's commercial capital of Shanghai was dealt a blow today as authorities reported 58 new COVID-19 cases outside areas under lockdown, while Beijing pressed on with testing millions of people on a May Day holiday few were celebrating. Tough coronavirus measures in Shanghai have stirred rare public anger, with millions of the city's 25 million people stuck indoors for more than a month, some sealed inside fenced-off residential compounds and many struggling to secure daily necessities.
Shanghai residents breathed a sigh of relief at the weekend on news that no cases had been confirmed outside areas under lockdown for 2 days. But disappointment came on Monday with the report of 58 new infections. Authorities did not comment on the new cases at a media briefing, but members of the public weighed in online. Still, many people also took heart from data that showed encouraging trends, with 32 new deaths on Sunday compared to 38 a day earlier, and a total of 6,804 new local cases, down from 7,189 the previous day. Despite the drop in cases, more fences were erected at some residential blocks in Shanghai on Monday. Although authorities said employees of companies, the government has put on a production priority list that could apply for a pass if the building they lived in had no cases for 7 days. The coronavirus first emerged in the Chinese city of Wuhan in late 2019, and for 2 years authorities managed to keep outbreaks largely under control with lockdowns and travel bans. But the fast-spreading Omicron variant has tested China's zero-COVID policy this year, an important one for President Xi Jinping, who is expected to secure a president-breaking third leadership term in the autumn. China has given no hint of deviating from its policy despite a mounting toll on the world's second largest economy and ripples of disruption through global supply chains. China reported 7,822 new COVID-19 cases on Sunday, down from 8,329 new cases a day earlier. All of China's new deaths were in Shanghai, taking the country's overall death toll since the virus emerged to 5,092. India, the only country with a comparable population to China's 1.4 billion people, has officially recorded more than 500 million deaths, though some health experts believe its toll is even higher.
Energy ministers are hoping to reach a united stance on Russian gas and oil via a series of emergency talks this week. They will have to find a way out of the dilemma posed by Russian energy suppliers, which count for 40% of EU gas and 26% of its oil imports. Germany and others have so far resisted calls for an abrupt halt to Russian fuel imports for fear of economic damage, while Moscow is demanding that European buyers pay for Russian gas in rubles or face their supply being cut off.
Humanitarian organizations work to evacuate more civilians from the devastated Ukrainian port city of Mariupol, but hundreds of people remain trapped in the Azovstal steelworks, the last stronghold of resistance to the Russian siege. A first group of evacuees was due to arrive in a Ukrainian-held town northwest of Mariupol on Monday, but a city official told Reuters that Russian forces resumed shelling the steelworks on Sunday as soon as the buses had left the plant. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister has said the situation has become a sign of a real humanitarian catastrophe as people still stuck there were running out of water, food and medicine. On the international front, EU energy ministers were due to hold emergency talks on Moscow's demand that European buyers pay for Russian gas in rubles or face their supply being cut off. While the EU has imposed heavy economic sanctions on Russia in response to its invasion of Ukraine, the issue of Russia's energy supplies has posed a dilemma that threatens to crack the united front. Budapest remains opposed to the introduction of an EU embargo on oil and gas imported from Russia. A total embargo on the two Russian fossil fuel is currently being considered by the EU Commission for inclusion in its sixth round of sanctions against Moscow. However, Germany's economy minister admits there is no unanimous view among the bloc's 27 countries on winding down supplies on Russian energy. Russian President Vladimir Putin's forces are now in control of nearly all the city, linking up Russian-held territory on the west and east.
And that's all for tonight. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.